See, we have a question here from Mike in the chat room. Arizona held a closed meeting for delegates only and no alternates to elect the delegation officers for the RNC. Is this legal?
Well, I don't know because I don't know what's in Arizona's bylaws to understand that. Again, see, the bylaws dictate as to the proper procedures that need to be followed as far as electing or selecting delegates. It's important to know these things so you know what it is that you have to fight against should you have to contest something. It doesn't sound legal to me, but I don't know if the bylaws are set up that way to where delegates are slated by, committee or whether they have to be nominated from the floor. Without the information of what the bylaws state as to how that convention needs to be run, I can't really answer that question.
Okay. We have another question that we jotted down. What do you do if a convention is not properly adjourned?
Well, if you have a quorum, I guess I should probably explain what a quorum is. A quorum is the minimum amount of people required to conduct official business at that convention. If you have a quorum, you just continue the meeting, out in the parking lot or in the lobby or, wherever you so choose to do so. Now, you would have to elect a new chair, and a new secretary, new officers to actually continue the meeting. But if a meeting is adjourned illegally, you continue the meeting, and then you file your report to the RNC or to your state committee as to what you did to elect and select your delegates. Now, this is what's going on in Oklahoma right now.
Exactly.
Now Oklahoma has filed, they do have attorneys on this, folks, so I wouldn't get too worked up yet. What everybody saw last night, I really wouldn't worry so much about. There are attorneys involved that are potentially going to file a suit, but they've contested the results so that their delegates can be seated and the other delegates are actually removed because they violated the bylaws. Now, the bylaws is what dictated how delegates needed to be elected. And that's when we talked earlier in the show about the roll call vote, which is required to elect and nominate delegates in Oklahoma.
Okay. Let's see if we got some other questions here. Let's see. How do you become a delegate? Contest your rules. See what else we have here. Now, those of you asking where you get the bylaws, because we got that multiple times in the chat, there's a link. Me and Yowan have been posting it multiple times that list it for every state, and then you can find those bylaws. Let's see here. Can you explain what a point of information is, and a point of order as well?
Yeah. Well, a point of information is basically you're going to ask a question about something. You're trying to find out what's going on. The problem is with a point of information is it does not have to be acknowledged. I mean, nowhere in the rules is a point of information or even a parliamentary inquiry need to be addressed. I mean, it can just literally be turned down. A point of order is a specific statement based on something that was done either illegally or the way that somebody needs to do it legally. I can probably give an example. Your point of order is when you address the chair. Okay, you stand up, you yell point of order, the chair is supposed to address you, you're supposed to give your name and district of where you're from, and you would say something like, Mr. Chairman, to end debate and call the question requires a 2/3 majority. This is not debatable and must be enacted, and this was done improperly, therefore debate must continue. That would be a valid point of order.
Okay, and also to let everyone know, if you want to get some practice, Steve does play chairman sometimes over at RonPaulTribune.com, and we do kind of mock conventions sometimes. It's a good way to get practice because a lot of us have never been through this process before. I've never had a clue about any of this, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people listening now as well. Now, Steve, we have about 7 to 8 minutes left before the end of the hour, and I definitely want to get you on the next hour if that's fine with you. If there's anything else you think we should touch on before we run out of time? This hour?
I think I would encourage everyone to come over to RonPaulTribune.com. We've been doing these mock-type conventions for the last few days, and everybody's really gotten into it. And quite honestly, most of you have impressed me over there because you're able to do things that you couldn't do a few days ago, and you're absolutely correct when you're doing them. So I think it's important if you want to get some basic training on how a meeting goes, folks, come over to RonPaulTribune.com, watch what we do. Okay, we actually conduct business over there exactly how a meeting should go. You know, if somebody requests a song be played, they have to put a motion to the floor, and it has to be voted on by the assembly. You know, we elect a chairman, we elect our secretaries, and we do this exactly the way a convention needs to be run. And for those of you new to this, or those of you that just want to learn more and get repetitive about it, so that you can learn this stuff and know it inside and out, I would recommend that you actually come over. And by the way, at 6 p.m. tonight, I'm going to do another question and answer session over there at ronpaultribune.com, and we may do another mock convention tonight. I don't know if I'll have time, but if not, we'll do it another day.
So somebody here wants to, I guess they must have just joined us. Please address RNC Rule 15 with regards to early elections and bound delegates.
What was the question?
Can you please address the RNC Rule 15 in regards, I think it says, with regards to early elections and bound delegates?
Well, yeah, I can give the brief. You know, I mean, Rule 15 is a very, very long rule if you actually look at it in the RNC call. But I think what they're talking about is what Rule 15 requires is a state to hold a specific primary or caucus within a certain time frame, and they cannot do it too early. If they do it too early, they can be penalized. Now, this actually happened in one state that I know of, the state of Florida and Michigan. Those states both held their primaries early, which was a violation of Rule 15 because it was a violation of the way that things were set up, and they each lost half of their delegates. What was the second part of the question, Paco?
It was just saying in regards to early elections and bound delegates.
Okay. Yeah. As far as bound delegates goes, Rule 15 is pretty clear, okay? Rule 15 actually explains that delegates and alternate delegates to the National Convention can be elected, allocated or bound only in one of the following manners, okay? It's either A, by primary election, or B, by the Republican State Committee, which has to be specified, again, in either state law or bylaws. So they do recognize binding, but there are certain ways that you can't bind your delegates. See, folks, this stuff is extremely confusing. Yeah. and they want it this way because it keeps the normal average person from being effective. This is why it's important to understand these things. If any of you can afford in your group of delegates to hire a parliamentarian for a couple of hours, it would do you a world of good. Now, most parliamentarians will charge between $75 and $250 an hour, depending on where you're at and who the parliamentarian is. But if you really want to get a good grasp of these rules and what you can and can't do, it would be money well spent. I mean, obviously, I've been teaching people for free. You can find me regularly at ronpaultribune.com. It's not really the format that's probably fits everybody because, they talk about a lot of different things, but usually when I'm there, they give me the floor and just let me answer questions about delegates and parliamentarian procedure. But I'm doing all this for you for free. But if you've got somebody local, nothing wrong with hiring a parliamentarian to get trained.
And real quick, Yohan just posted up the link they want me to mention over there at Ron Paul Tribune. If you're in the chat room on Ron Paul Radio, we put the link up for ronpaultribune.com, the voice chat room link. You can click on that and join us. And just to let you guys know, Steve is always there with us, whether it's early in the morning, whether it's at night. Steve is there so many times, and he's right. We tend to give him the floor because he's giving us information that otherwise we would have to pay for. So we definitely appreciate it. I know everyone over there appreciates it. And so please join us. We're about to be heading to the break. We'll be back on 5 after. So, again, at ronpaultribune.com, also on ronpaulradio.com. If you need to grab some tea, some coffee, or some water real quick, definitely do that before we're back. And maybe we can answer this last question before we run out of time. Someone posted, what are electors, and should we fight for them instead of delegates?
Well, yeah, electors actually, if you're talking about the Electoral College, electors are the people that actually get to decide who becomes the president. If anybody remembers, when George Bush ran against Al Gore won the popular vote by more than 2 million votes, but the Electoral College decided to give the nomination to George Bush. And by the way, there's penalties for that as well. And actually what I read about that is I believe that it's a $1,000 fine should you become part of the Electoral College and vote your conscience rather than the will of the people.
All right, Steve, I'll give you a call back in a couple minutes, and we'll be back on 5 after in the next